Russ, tell me, how did you first meet Vasily Lomachenko?
My first contact with him was we met in Macau when I was there working with Jesse Vargas and Roy Jones. We met, in the meeting area. Egis Klimas was there. Took a picture with Vasily at that time. Let him know that I had called his fights through the games. Fast forward ahead, and he was on that card. I should preface that he was on that card as well. So that's where I met him because we're in the same areas for weigh-ins, etc. Fast forward ahead to after his third pro fight, his manager, Egis Klimas, is in town in Montreal with Sergey Kovalev, who's getting set to fight Jean Pascal.
Yeah.
And he asked me, he found out through a friend of mine that, I was good at wrapping hands, and Vasily in his 3 previous fights with 3 different pairs of gloves had issues with his hands this early in his career. So my friend said, you should try Russ Anber. He's the best. You try him. So Egis called me up and asked me if I would come to their hotel to wrap up Vasily. I told him I couldn't make it to the hotel because I had to be at the venue early enough. However, your hotel's right across the street from the venue. Why don't you just meet me at the venue, come into the dressing room. Nobody will be there. I'll wrap you up and we'll go from there. So they did. And I wrapped his hands, showed him the gloves. He was really happy with them. And later on, Egis asked me to join him for the next fight, which I proudly did. And when I walked back into the dressing room after the fight, he just turned to me, stuck his hand out and said, to shake my hand and said, "Welcome to Team Lomachenko." And that's how the Lomachenko relationship began.
What a great story. I mean, you mentioned that when you wrapped his hands, he had problems prior to that, had he? Had he injured his hands or because they weren't wrapped in a certain way and your wrapping maybe made a difference?
Whatever it was, I'd like to think it made a difference. I'd like to think that I've made a difference because with me, he's never suffered an injury in my gloves or with my hand wrapping since I started working with him. So he did suffer an injury when wearing someone else's gloves, but that was beyond my control. And I think the combination of my gloves and my hand wrapping has proven, touch wood, to have worked perfectly, and we haven't had any issues. And I'm really happy about that and proud of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That really is. What do you think actually makes him so special then? I mean, I've watched loads of his fights, very fast hands, amazing movement. His endurance is good, and he seems to come on a lot stronger in the latter rounds, perhaps. If I'm saying anything wrong, by the way, and you don't agree with me, please do let me know. But that's just a neutral's kind of watching of fights. What do you think makes him so special?
Brother, I don't know. I mean, this is a level of special that you rarely see. And sadly, it's been a special that's been, almost brushed under the rug, swept under the rug, if you will, by the American media, unjustly, I would say as well, because if Lomachenko had been an American and did that rise through the professional ranks that he did, I think he'd be lauded as a hero. He is of the same talent, per se, natural, gifted ability that you can't teach, you can't train. You can maybe show somebody, but to be able for him to execute what he executes takes such a special gift that have only been bestowed on a few people in boxing history. The Muhammad Alis of the world, the Sugar Ray Leonards of the world, the Sugar Ray Robinsons of the world, the Roy Joneses, special gifts that are only gifted upon are blessed upon these selected few, and he's one of them. And he has a concept of being able to fight in a very classic manner as well. People don't understand that his style is very classic, hands up, movement, all the things you want to teach to a fighter, his balance, wide foot stance, pivots, all stuff that you teach to fighters, he executes beyond perfection. Now, in some of the other guys I've listed, like Roy Jones, Ali, Floyd Mayweather, all got away with being so gifted that they were able to almost do a different style and broke every basic rule of boxing. He doesn't. He does it in a very classic, boxing manner, and yet still can perform so many different moves, so many different things with his feet, with his hands, with his defense, everything. It's so complete, and it's remarkable how someone can do that. And as a trainer, I'm looking at this, like, I see this through such different eyes than the layman see it. And without insulting you, I see it through such different eyes than you see it, Neil. But you see what you see, I see even more, and I know how difficult it is to do what he's doing as a trainer, and to get a fighter to be able to emulate or copy what he's doing is almost impossible. It's like the greats in any sport. They used to say about Wayne Gretzky in ice hockey that he sees the plays, he sees everything happening in slow motion, slower than everyone else is seeing it. That's why he can do the things he do. And that's sometimes what I believe about Lomachenko. It seems the way he reacts, it seems as if the opponent is not only telegraphing his punches, he's slowing them down and telling him what he's going to do. That's how well he does it, which is unexplainable. I can't even begin to tell you how he's able to do that. I sit in the corner sometimes in awe watching him work, because it's beyond anything I really had ever seen before in my life.
I guess that's why they call him the Matrix. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what they call him, the Matrix. But it's a nickname, and the Matrix relates to a movie. I'm telling you, he's doing this stuff in a boxing stance, in a traditional boxing stance. And he's combining all the great things that you can do in boxing, all the skill sets that everybody should use: hand speed, combination punching, body punching, working behind the jab, counter punching, good defense and counter punching, pivoting around your opponent, exploiting your southpaw stance. These are all things you would teach a fighter. And he does them all exceptionally well, above average, way above average well, greatness level well. So I can't explain it. It's like I said, I sit there sometimes in awe that he can do this, because nobody else can. Nobody else can.
I recently watched the Linares fight. I think he was knocked down in round 6 there, but went on to win the fight. I think it's either the 10th or the 11th round.
Yeah.
But I watched that fight, and even though he was knocked down
with a body shot.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's right. I mean, I think he absolutely dominated that fight.
Sure he did.
It was a real scrap, but it was a dominating performance, I think, that he put on there. Yeah, and of course it was a body shot that took Linares down, from which he didn't get up.
Right.
You've seen lots of his fights, if not the vast majority. What do you think his best couple of performances might be?
Well, I guess it depends how you define best, because you can define it by his personal best performance, or do you define it by the opponent in front of him, the elite level opponent that they put in front of him? I think, and you can divide that, it's fair to divide that up both ways. But before I answer that, Neil, I just want to ask you something, because you saw the fight. So I'm going to ask you the question.
Sure.
I can make a strong argument for the round that he got knocked down in, that he won that round, even with getting knocked down.
I think he was caught with a punch, and he was straight back up. Whether it was a balanced shot or not, I'm not 100%, but I didn't see a round going to Linares in that fight, to be absolutely frank. I'm not certain about that round 6. See, as a casual watcher, I guess we see a knockdown and we think, okay, that's a 10-8. But of course, we're not watching it through your eyes.
Yeah, and that's an argument I have with people about judging, which we can get into later. But I always, you score a knockdown. Loma is winning that round big, which means if the round ends just before the knockdown, Loma wins the round 10-9.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I see where you're going with this, yeah.
Gets knocked down on an off-balance shot where he's caught on his heels and gets sat on the seat of his pants. Not hurt at all, but gets clipped and gets dropped because his feet are squared up. He gets dropped. That goes from a 10-9 Lomachenko round to a 10-8 Linares round, meaning that you got 3 points for a knockdown. And when else do you get 3 points for a knockdown?
Yeah, I completely see the point of view.
I think it's a weak argument. But that said, back to your original question about his best performance.
Yeah.
I think that run of the 3 consecutive no mas wins where the fighters retired in their corner, I think that was as flawless boxing as you can ever witness by an athlete in consecutive fights. I mean, there are 3 consecutive fights where he does not lose, not a round. He doesn't lose a minute of a round in any of those fights. And I believe that was the Walters fight, Rigondeaux, and the third one is Jason Sosa.
Right.
Took a while for the hard drive to spin around here. But those 3 fights, he doesn't lose a round in those 3 fights. And I think that was his ultimate, performance of everything that he can do in different styles against different guys. And it was just total Lomachenko domination.
I might have to go back and watch those 3 fights in sequence and see what I think in that case.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Moving on to, I also watched another fight several times actually, and that was the fight against TFO Lopez. And that was a fight, I think, during lockdown. So yes, I guess the atmosphere wasn't quite there, and it was in slightly unusual circumstances.
A little bit.
I do think that was probably correctly scored. In that, I do think Teofimo Lopez won that fight. Have I got that wrong again, Russ?
Yeah. Well, I was going to question you on your language. If you felt Lopez won the fight, I can't argue with you. I'm not going to say no, he didn't, and we can get into that in a second.
Yeah.
But if you're telling me you agree with the scoring, the way the judges scored it, they were out.
Didn't look at the scores. Didn't look at the scorecard. Okay. But I came away from that fight thinking, I think Teofimo Lopez won that fight.
So here's my take on that.
You were in the corner, right?
I was in the corner.
Yeah.
And after rewatching the fight, going into the fight in the corner, I remember turning to Eggis probably around the 6th round and saying to Eggis, because with Loma, like it's only his father that talks in the corner, and he's one of the guys that I rarely have to say anything other than, "Hey, all right, way to go, Loma," and anything like that. But instruction-wise, it's the father who takes care of everything. And I remember saying to Eggis in the corner, I said, "Eggis, I don't know what the plan is, but we better start We better start get going. Otherwise, we're going to lose this."
Yeah.
And that would have been halfway through the fight. And that's when he started coming on. And as we got to the end, I knew we needed round 12. Just in my heart, just being a fight guy, just knowing, I knew we needed round 12. And I didn't think we got it. And I thought, if they're going to take it from us, they're going to take it based on this, because we really needed that. When I went back and rewatched the fight, believe it or not, the whole scoring came down on how you scored round 2, in my opinion. Right. Round 6, you can also make an argument for, but round 2, how did you score round 2? Because if you scored round 2 to Lomachenko, the fight ends up a draw. If you give it to Lopez, based on what I saw, again, the 6th maybe, but based on what I saw, you give it a 7-5 decision to Teofimo Lopez. But round 2 was and again, this comes back to scoring, of how you have to be careful how you score rounds. But if you give that round to Lomachenko, there's no way you can end up with anything else but a draw, because 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 can easily go to Lopez, and you give him the 12th.
Yeah.
That makes 6. In my book, 6 and 6 makes 12 as well. So the other 6 goes to Lomachenko. So that was a very closely contested fight. There were issues, obviously, that we know about. But, Teofimo is an exceptional talent who runs hot and cold. But he's a gifted, talented fighter.
How did Loma take the result? How did he feel it had gone? Because at the end, he looked a little bit deflated, and I think in the ring, Lopez was the one that looked like he thought he had snatched that victory.
Yeah, and I think he knew that he let them snatch it. I think he knew that He did not give the performance he wanted to give.
Yeah.
I think he came on immensely, in 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We only needed that 12th round. And I think Lopez knew that as well. And he came out for it and went for it. Although the judges scoring certainly did not reflect that. But if you're asking how he felt as compared to the utter robbery of the Devin Haney fight,
which I'm sure we're going to come on to in a second and talk about.
Yeah, which he was absolutely devastated by, because then you won. And there's no way of hiding the tears and the crushing feeling you had at that point when they just robbed you.
So actually that's quite smooth, because I wanted to ask you about that fight. I watched that. I remember getting up at 4:00 in the morning here, UK time, to watch that fight. And I'm going to ask you to talk me through how you felt that went, because I thought that was really close. I did think, and you're going to hate this, and I know you hate this language, that it could have gone either way. We've talked about earlier in an earlier conversation about rounds going either way. I do feel it was quite close. But tell me what you thought whilst you were watching that fight and whilst you were in the corner.
I wish you wouldn't have told me that, Neil, because I thought that you had a better eye for this kind of stuff. I might have to talk to your son about this, but there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that Lomachenko was winning that fight easily. I was comfortable. The fact that anybody says it's close, including yourself, is because Devin Haney is a good fighter, and he hung in there, and he wasn't battered all over the ring. And I think we expect that sometimes from fighters that we hold in such high regard, as in this case with Lomachenko, of holding him in such high regard, that anything that is short of a complete obliteration must mean that Haney was close. But it wasn't. It wasn't. He controlled every aspect of that, so much so that, you hear Devin tell his father, he knows what I'm doing. He can't figure, he's got me figured out. I can't figure him out. He just does everything right on how you should win a fight, being the aggressor, controlling the action, ring generalship, defense, everything you want to name in boxing, he has it. And if you're really sincere about wanting to score a fight, and I'm as critical as the next, I know that we have to, I screamed at him in the corner, win that last round, which I thought he won, and ESPN gave him that last round, and the judges did not. And it's almost like you did it on purpose, because maybe he didn't win the 12th as big as he won the 11th. So when they see that, when you don't have that kind of form, you think the other guy does better, and you have a tendency of giving them the rounds. And I hate that. I hate that you do that. You're more like giving a makeup round, or you're giving, pat on the back round because you did better than the last round. So we're going to give you that. There is no way you score that fight as a real boxing guy. Watching it, remove yourself emotionally from it. Watch the fight. Who's the aggressor? Who's landing the punches? In general, not the one-off punch that you see here and there. Who's landing? Who's blocking? Who's making the other guy miss? Who's landing the combinations? And all those things point to Lomachenko. And there is no way I see him losing that fight. Was it close? Of course it was. Did he have to work for it? Of course he did. Did he win those rounds? Yes, he did.
Yeah, thanks, Russ. You put me firmly in my place there. I think that's the last time I'm going to tell you what I think happened in a fight.
No, you're not going. It's not going to be the last time. You're just going to watch it through different eyes.
I'll go back tonight and watch it again, I'm sure. There's talk of him retiring, or perhaps he has retired, but I read somewhere that he was going to let everybody know sometime in January whether he is officially retired or not. You don't have any insight into that at all, do you?
I don't. And I would tell you if I did, unless I was ordered not to. But I have not been told either way, which is a good thing, because I think not having been told means I'm not hearing about a retirement coming up. So, and we know he's on a medical leave because of his back by the IBF. So, the retirement has not been announced yet either. So I guess there's always that. When I spoke to Lomachenko over the holidays, what I wanted to make very clear to him, and I hope I did, was that, he has nothing to prove now. And if he can't live by something that he told me years ago, if he can't live by that or chooses to no longer live by that, then he should get out. And he always said to me, Russ, I can train 24 hours a day. And I reminded him of that. I said, when you no longer enjoy that, or you don't want to do that anymore, then it's time to get out.
Mm.
So we have to wait and see, just like me, Neil. You're going to have to wait just like me.
Yeah. Do you think? I mean, if he doesn't retire, hypothetically, if he hasn't retired, what fights might be on the horizon for him? Do you think?
I don't know. I mean, there's lots of talk, of the Tank Davis fight. That could be something. I don't know.
How would that one play out? Do you think?
Well, if you asked me this a few years ago, I think Loma toys with him.
Yeah.
Now, everybody ages, right? You slow down that one little bit, and Davis has gotten bigger and stronger and more confident and more experienced, and there's a lot of things playing into that. So I think the fight is definitely closer now than it would have been a few years ago. But I like the fight personally. I think that Loma loves southpaws, loves fighting southpaws. I think he's fighting somebody at least for this time his own size,
Yeah.
which he never does. He doesn't.
Yeah.
Haney wasn't his size. Lopez wasn't his size. At least he's fighting a guy his size. And I think the style is made to order for him. I think it's somebody who's right there, who can be hit, who's a strong puncher, no doubt about it, but he's meeting somebody who has speed and defense in front of him, and can work at a very high rate that Davis doesn't particularly like to work at. So I personally like the fight, but I only like it if Lomachenko still has that hunger and that desire to want to train.
That would be an absolutely fantastic fight. It really would if they could make that. But we'll wait and see. We'll find out. Maybe later on in January, we'll find out whether he is retiring or not.
I hope so.
Russ, it would be remiss of me not to ask you some current affairs questions about boxing. Can you spare me another 5 minutes?
Of course.
Okay. I read again a couple of days ago that Turki Al-Sheikh has talked of putting together a boxing league. I think there's going to be a UK boxing league, or he would like to have a UK boxing league and a US boxing league. What do you think about that?
This is the first I'm hearing of it, so
okay.
I don't know. I didn't see that. I've been in meetings all day today. If this came out today, I didn't see it. If it came out before, I still didn't see it. So I don't even know enough about it or of what he wants to do. So I'm really not in a place to comment on it, Neil. I'm sorry. I don't.
No, that's fine. I mean, I watched it on Talk Sport, and they were talking about the difficulties that there might be in putting together a boxing league, and the advantages of it as well. But okay, well, maybe we can come back to that at another time, if we get any more information about that through different channels. Can I talk to you about the fight that I think has just been signed, which is Ben versus Eubank, and I think it's been signed at £160 with a £10 rehydration clause, which I think probably benefits Conor Benn as the lighter fighter. Any views on that particular fight?
Yeah. Why didn't they fight Beefy again in the rematch? Why isn't there a trilogy with Eubank and Smith? That should have been the fight that should have been made. But on this, I don't know. I don't know what to think anymore. I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, there's a massive interest because of the names that they have. Eubank.
Yeah, it's heritage fight, isn't it? Yeah, with
it's a heritage fight for the UK. There's no doubt about it. So I think it certainly draws interest. There's no doubt about it. I think it draws interest. What does it mean on the world stage? I don't know. Yeah, difficult to say what I think. I'm still bothered by the fact that Eubank didn't give Beefy the third fight.
Yeah, I wonder if in the future, Beefy's now not fought for, well, it's got to be since that fight, I imagine.
That's right.
And I know he's got another fight lined up, or he's got one line that is lined up that I think they're going to release quite soon. Let us know exactly who he's fighting. So, I mean, maybe in the future that will come along again. But there is this rehydration clause in there. What do you feel about rehydration clauses? Is it healthy for is it healthy for somebody, say, to fight at 160, or the day before, 2 days before, to be weighed at 160, and then simply be told, well, look, you can't go over an additional 10 pounds to rehydrate? Is it a healthy situation?
Well, look, I don't I'm not particularly against it. The IBF has a very good rule about that. I mean, previous day weigh-ins are flawed now at the best of times, okay? Like having the weigh-in, there's no fighters today that are in their real weight class anymore. By the time they get into the ring, they're in 2 and sometimes 3 weight classes above the class they're fighting in. Which is just makes a mockery of boxing, but it's supposed to be for the protection of the fighter. The 10 pounds that you're talking about, that's only good until the next day. So, for example, the next day at 9 in the morning, you weigh in and you can't be more than 170 pounds at 9 in the morning. They're so worried about the 9 in the morning weigh in for the 10 pounds, but yet the previous day weigh in, they do as early as 9 in the morning as well, which, is 36 hours before they're going to even be entering the ring, which is insanity. It's crazy when you think about that. So I can't say I'm opposed to the rehydration clause. I'm opposed to it when it always has to be a stickler in a negotiation. But I can't say from a health perspective and a fair perspective that I'm opposed to it. The other thing you can do is have the weigh-in. Okay, we're having the weigh-in the day before the fight, fine, but it's going to be 24 hours before. So that means we're going to have the weigh-ins at, let's say, 5 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock at night instead of having it at 9 in the morning, which is crazy, which is what they're doing now. So why aren't you having the weigh-ins at 5 in the afternoon the day before? That's more than 24 hours before you fight. And then you're not going to be able to put on the weight that they're putting on now, because now it's gotten to the point where they're calling for weigh-ins at 9 a.m. Fighters are coming in and weighing 135 pounds for 3.5 seconds and then entering the ring at upwards of 154 pounds on fight night or more, which is insane when you think about it. And if you don't believe me, just go watch video on YouTube of all the greats of the past. Go watch Roberto Duran, and on your other computer screen beside you, put a picture up of Devin Haney or whoever's lightweight that there is now, and look at the massive size difference between the two. It's unbelievable. It's a junior middleweight in one frame and a lightweight in the other, and it's visible to the eye. You don't have to be a boxing genius to see that. You put the two guys together. So ask somebody who doesn't know who's bigger, they're going to tell you the guy on the right. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So
I watched the Loma Haney fight, Haney looked massive. much bigger than Loma, much bigger. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, look, we might come back to that at some point. What about, there's another one that they think that Turki Al-Sheikh says he would like to sign, and it's a heavyweight fight. Not certain whether you'll have any interest in this, although I think you do have connections to Deontay Wilder. It's Joshua versus Deontay Wilder, so a fight that really should have happened a long, long time ago. Would you like to see that fight or not?
I mean, I'd like to see it. Like any fight, I'd watch. But it certainly is going to be another case of, two fighters who didn't meet when they should have met. Didn't meet at a time that I believe I was still with Deontay Wilder at the time, and I told them to take the fight when it was offered to them. And it never happened. And I mean, it's sad that now it's almost like you get the feeling that they're just trying to recycle two guys that have been beaten in their most recent fights and put them together, and probably trying to relaunch one of them onto the scene. It makes sense from a boxing perspective, and I'm not saying that a guy should call it a career after being stopped. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it certainly isn't a Wilder or a Joshua that was at the, they were kings of the division for so many years.
Yeah, if they were at their peak, how would you have seen that one going?
Am I working with Wilder or not?
You're neutral.
I'm neutral. Look, I think it was a dangerous fight for both guys, but there was a time when I think that Deontay Wilder, when we had him doing what we wanted him to do, and before he kind of strayed off and did his own thing and started making a ton of mistakes and leaving himself vulnerable, there was a time when that right hand ruled the division, and he could have hit anybody at any time and knocked them out. And Joshua proved to be versatile and was able to come back after defeats and win. I think Rob McCracken had a great role to play in that as well. And I think Anthony had a lot of trust in McCracken. And I thought that McCracken was, Joshua was able to be versatile under McCracken. So, it would have been a really interesting pick'em fight between two guys that were generally recognized as the best in the division. And I think would have garnished great interest in, how do you stay away from that power, which I think Rob McCracken would have found a way to try to do that. And, Wilder would have been looking to land the right hand. And whether it's Joshua or anybody else, and I think Tyson Fury can attest to that as well, if Wilder hits you, he's going to hurt you. And we've seen that with a lot of fighters. He arguably had, one of the best right hands in boxing history.